Ja, tako, čast mi je, da sem prva, ki danes predstavljam svoj članek oziroma temo, v katero sem se malo bolj poglobila. Lepo vas pozdravljam tukaj iz Utrehta na Nizozemskem in mi je žal, da se nisem mogla v živo udeležiti. In tudi hvala vsem za tako lepo sprejetje na to konferenco. So let me switch in English now because I wanted to present in English to maybe share the concept a bit wider, and I think it's really important to communicate in English to actually achieve your goals and as many people as you can. So I'm gonna talk about food self-sufficiency in Slovenia, mention a bit of questions and dilemmas. Okay. Okay. So the industrialization of food production is one of the great achievements of modern history, and it has created a situation when most of us need to think rarely twice about how nutrients move from the earth all the way into our bodies. And I'm really interested, how many times have you thought of that actually? How many times have you thought, what are you eating? And how is this produced? How does it influence your body? What's the quality of the food? Is it surrounded with plastics? Where is it produced? And all questions like that we should have asked ourselves. So more centralized food systems mean that cultivation is more efficient, diets are increasingly diversified, and food availability continues to rise in various regions across the world. As a result, most of the world's population today reside in countries that are at least in part dependent on important food. But there are two sides to every story, and as has been exposed by recent events, there may be unforeseen negative consequences to a globalized food industry. So let me start with the term food self-sufficiency. According to Food and Agriculture Organization, that's FAO, and I'm going to mention this abbreviation a few more times. In its broadest term, food self-sufficiency refers to a country's capacity to meet its own food needs from domestic production. A bit more practical way to think about it is to express the percentage of foods consumed in terms of how much food is produced domestically. And this is the formula here. This is called, food self-sufficiency ratio, or SSR. So I would like to tell you, mention that food self-sufficiency is often presented as an extreme concept by its critics, who see it mostly that it is inefficient and still trade distorting, because centralization of food production could actually be good. I mean, it is good in general. So in practice, however, many countries seeking to improve their food self-sufficiency do so in context of the international trade part. The aim is not to produce 100% of their food on domestic soil, but rather increase domestic capacity to produce food, and even in countries that are that engages export. So that's an obvious thing, and it will always happen. What about the importance of food self-sufficiency? It is of very great importance as it ensures national security for the period of economic crisis and reduces dependence of foreign trade, which is especially important in times of disrupted global supply. So this is exactly why the current COVID-19 pandemic and ensuring restrictions to global flow of goods may create large negative consequences for countries with lower SSR. Moreover, the concept of food self-sufficiency has direct implications for a country's or region's ability to independently meet the dietary needs of its population, regardless of external circumstances. So those are just a few titles of the articles I have found that were also included in my article. Again, FAO, so according to this organization, about 75% of food today is processed from only 12 plant and 5 animal species, making the global food system particularly vulnerable. Therefore, adapting agricultural agriculture to climate change will only be the key factors for providing sufficient food for future generations. Another term I would quickly like to emphasize is the sustainability, or basically sustainable development. This term means it means that we meet the needs of current human race without compromising the needs of future generations. So the concept includes care for the environment, sustainable use of natural resources, increasing economic and social well-being, and sustainable agriculture and industry as well. Those are the 17 sustainable development goals I included. They're from the United Nations goals. And I would suggest you to read it and maybe get some inspiration, all the things that actually you can do on a daily basis. Okay, a few impacts of commercial agriculture. So it is highly capital and energy intensive and employs a few people, actually less than 5% in economically developed countries, and presents a heavy burden on the environment. So agriculture designed in this way is unsustainable and destroys natural resources from which it is essentially independent. So actually it is a very vicious cycle. Soil fertility declines due to erosion and soil poisoning, soil trampling, and destruction of organic matter. And water supply is threatened by depletion of water resources and agricultural pollution. Moreover, in mechanized agriculture, non-renewable fossil fuels are used. Also, long transport of foods are decreasing nutritional value of foods, which means it has lower quality and often adding chemical treatment. Let me finally start with the level of self-sufficiency in Slovenia. In 1970, the level of food self-sufficiency was over 70%, while in 2008, it was only around 50%, and it has unfortunately further declined since the last decade. So today, Slovenia is not entirely food self-sufficient. As shown below, it is self-sufficient only in a few categories of agri-food products. And basically, yes, cereals do stand out, but also meat. In 2020, this is the table from 2020, there were particularly low levels of food self-sufficiency with regard to fruit, vegetables, and honey. On the other hand, Slovenia produces far more food of animal origin that its citizens consume. The highest level are found in meat, eggs, and milk. I apologize. This is the graphs found our source. Vegetable consumption is on the rise. Nevertheless, there are still, as I said, really low rates of food self-sufficiency, and also self-sufficiency in fruit is also declining. Food self-sufficiency in organic food is particularly low. You might not get that feeling when you're in an actual store, but that's the fact. With organic farming being 5% of the, basically 5% of Slovenian farms were engaged in organic production, producing a tenth of all Slovenian agricultural land. Moreover, Slovenia has the least agricultural land per capita among European countries. And that might seem very striking because we see fields in Slovenia like everywhere. The share of agricultural land in areas with limited factors for agricultural production exceeds 75%. And in order to achieve at least 70 to 80 of Slovenia's food self-sufficiency, this percent should be increased by about a third by 2030. And also, with not the best natural resources at our disposal, we should also consider that for the production of 1 kilogram of beef, we need 15 times more land than the production of land of cereals, than the production, and actually 70 times more for the 1 kilogram of vegetables. So I apologize. This was a very important concept. As you can see, 15 times more land for production of beef than cereals, and 70 times more land for production of beef than vegetables. Yes, what are the possible solutions? So first of all, we need to think of new production methods that are less dependent on external factors, such as climate change and weather. And the emergence of new techniques such as vertical farming and aquaponics are highly promising in this regard. And also similar novel techniques such as meat culturing and fermentation-based production of microbial. Oh, you raised my hand. Oh, okay. I only have 2 minutes. I have to hurry a bit. So yeah, secondly, food production needs to become more decentralized so that a sustainable food supply can be maintained without great reliance on small groups of large producing countries. And third, and perhaps most importantly, the correct regulatory conditions and consumer sentiments that support localized production need to be in place. And a lot of regulatory obstacles still remain with this. What are the main holdbacks in self-sufficiency? Actually, the consumer is number one holdback, and we all have to read this, what I wrote, and be aware that we are a very important driving force and have a decisive influence on the development of the entire food industry. With its shopping habits, we direct the development of market and consequently influence decisions of what products growers will grow. So if you do not support a certain practice, a certain business, you do not have to buy things, and eventually things will change. Also, what I wanted to say is very important to educate ourselves and try to share awareness of importance of healthy and local produced food, and also distrust in global change. I pasted here a logo that is for Urbana Prehrana. We started this project on Climaton last week, and actually we have an Instagram site if you want to join us. It is a bit dead lately since I've moved to Utrecht, but we share very convenient and useful advices. And this is basically our point, to educate our other people. Another thing, a change of eating habits is a great importance. So people would not get as much, buy as much processed things, but buy at least 2 meals. That's I'm generally speaking, by themselves. That also means that the urgent needs to reduce the share of meat consumption and increase the inclusion of vegetables in diet. So Manu Terra, that's Slovenian Foundation for Sustainable Development, they say that a high level of food self-sufficiency in Slovenia cannot be achieved without reducing livestock production. And also a very discouraging thing is that basically 68% of food is discarded every year per person, and of this 24 kilograms were still edible food. So this is a huge holdback, because we should really start with new practices as composting and stuff like that. Also community gardens, so municipalities and governments, other stakeholders, to really invest their resources into setting network of community gardens, because there's a multitude of articles.
Please tell the final thoughts.
Yeah.
You are in 30 minutes.
Yes. I apologize. I didn't expect it will last so long. Yeah, the conclusion is that basically, as global food needs in the aggregated climate would undoubtedly increase. In addition to further increase in food prices, we also expect increasing geopolitical pressures to ensure food imports. And since Slovenia is not an important geopolitical force, it is all the more strategically and existentially important that we produce enough food of our own needs. And with local self-sufficiency, Slovenia would gain better food quality, the income of local agricultural producers would increase, and negative impact on the environment would be reduced. We argue that current structure of agricultural crops in Slovenia is far more sustainable, as livestock farming has much larger environmental footprint than crop production. And furthermore, we know that technological development, decentralization of food production, and shifts in consumer and policymaker sentiments are crucial success factors to future-proofing the food system. And we urge the food industry stakeholders across the world to participate in creating a much needed shift towards making the food industry more resilient and sustainable. Yes, and with that, I thank you for your attention. And I hope my presentation gave you something to think about.